And welcome back to yet another episode of On The Grid Podcast, your favourite weekly Formula One podcast with myself, host Adrian, my co-host Ethan Evans. In this episode, we will be reviewing the British Grand Prix, which we attended on the Saturday. A lot of fun. Rain was on offer as well, so we kind of got soaked in between a few other sessions, but all in all, it was a good day out, and hopefully we'll be doing a weekend next year. Ethan, first and foremost, episode 21, Silverstone GP. How are you doing? Have you recovered sleep-wise from the 4 o'clock wake up on Saturday?
I think just about. It was a very long day. I think we woke up at like 4 a.m., didn't get back until sort of after midnight. So a very long day, but also very good. We saw a lot of action. We did get soaked. But yeah, there's a lot of action to be had. We had the F3, the F2, and obviously qualifying as well. So a very good day, and hopefully next year we'll be there for the entire weekend.
Hey, you never know. We might be special guests at the Formula One next year. You never know. It could happen. We could break big time, and it could happen. But yes, as we've mentioned at the start of this episode, we will be reviewing the British Grand Prix. And let's start off with qualifying on the Saturday, where we were watching. Where were we watching from? I believe we were watching from the middle of the Wellington, the Hanger Straight into Copse Corner, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was heading into Copse Corner, but we saw most of, correct? Or is it Stowe? Stowe, sorry, Stowe. I stand corrected.
Yeah, down the
It's
Hanger
Stowe.
straight into Stowe.
Yeah, see, my circuit knowledge, like the cops and Stowe always get muddled up with me. I don't know why, but they always do. But yeah, we were watching Hangers. We were towards the latter stages of the Hanger Straight, heading into Stowe Corner. That's where we were based for qualifying. Let's start off with Q1. Top three of Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, and George Russell. Max Verstappen, I believe, was seventh in that session. Not a very good session. With the bottom five in Q1 being Sergio Perez once again, Broadwatch, Yuki Tsunoda, Zhou Guanyu, Nick De Vries, and Kevin Magnussen. I think let's start off with the top three to begin with. Lando Norris, P1, Charles Leclerc, P2, George Russell, P3. Wow. Home race for McLaren and for Lando Norris. And in Q1, he goes quickest by over 2/10 to Charles Leclerc and close to half a second faster than George Russell in P3. Ethan, what did you make of Lando, especially through the first qualifying session? Those McLaren upgrades that have been given on Lando's car have propelled that car from a back marker that we said at the start of the season to a front row contender once again.
Well, yeah, I think you kind of take it with a little pinch of salt in the first two stages of qualifying, because you never know where that's going to end up. It's a good sign, obviously, that they're at the front and they're not scraping into Q2 or Q3. But you kind of think, yeah, Verstappen's probably got some extra time in the bag, and maybe someone like the Mercedes or the Aston Martin as well. I think we've seen it before, maybe in Spain. I think Piastri topped in Q1. And then he ended up sort of, I don't think, just scraping into Q3. So you kind of had to take it with a little pinch of salt. But obviously, seeing a Brit top the timing sheets is very nice, especially at Silverstone. So yeah, it did get the crowd engaged and lively, I think.
Yeah, the atmosphere in Silverstone was very lively. Needless to say, there was a record attendance once again at the Silverstone circuit. I think it was throughout the whole weekend, 480,000 people went into the Silverstone circuit throughout the 3 days, which is fantastic to see. Maybe we can hit 500k next year. That's probably a given. But the bottom five, Sergio Perez once again out in Q1. Last time we saw Perez in Q3 was Miami, which was back in May, early May. which is over 2 months ago. Ethan, I mean, it goes from worse to worse for Sergio Perez. He recovers, okay, he recovers, but he should not be starting outside the top 10. Never mind qualifying 16th. 16th, as Nepenthes would say.
Yeah, it's simply not good enough. I know he's made up positions in the race, and he hasn't finished below. Well, apart from Monaco, he hasn't finished outside the top 6 this season. But think of how many more points Red Bull would have gotten if Sergio Perez had even just got into Q3, just qualify 10th, 9th or 10th. Just get yourself in there, get yourself in the mix, and then the race pace is so superior to every other car that you're gonna get a podium at least. Yeah, simply not good enough for Perez. He's lucky in the sense that Verstappen is just on a different level this season and is good enough to be winning the Constructors' Championship on his own. But yeah, you could easily see Perez slip down the drivers' standings in the near future. And if he keeps this up, I do not see him finishing second in what is clearly the best car by a country mile.
On to the two AlphaTauris, the sister team to Red Bull, Yuki Tsunoda in 17th and Nick De Vries in 19th. It just proves once again that AlphaTauri is probably the worst car on the grid this season. I mean, Yuki Tsunoda at times has been outperforming that car, but Nick De Vries being a rookie, I think he's found it very hard to establish himself as a mainstay. And we'll find out in another episode what has happened to him. Bye bye. But it's just, I think it was a tricky weekend for AlphaTauri, no matter what, because like I say, probably the worst car on the grid, and both of their drivers subsequently got knocked out in Q1.
Yeah, it's not been good enough from De Vries, to be honest. But then again, he's not been in these last few races, particularly. He's not been a massive amount off of Tsunoda. So you think Tsunoda qualifying 17th, he's 19th. If Tsunoda was qualifying sort of 12th, 13th, like he was at the start of the season, and getting and fighting for points, you can understand it a little bit more. But Yuki's dropped his levels off in these last few races. So you kind of think, is he doing that much worse? No, but then again, he's come in as sort of outside of the Red Bull program. So he needs to deliver from day one, and he hasn't done that. And we've made many jokes at his expense about the amount of crashes he's had throughout the season, which has been atrocious. But yeah, you could argue, what's the harm in giving him 2 more races to the summer break to see how he performs? But yeah, it's a difficult one. But you know what Red Bull are like? They're not nice on their drivers. They give opportunities to the young drivers to get into sport, but once you're in, you have to deliver from day one, and he hasn't done that. So yeah.
On to Q2, and we saw Max Verstappen rise to the top of the timing charts with a 1:27.7. Oscar Piastri in second and Lando Norris in third, with a bottom 5 of Nico Hulkenberg, Lance Stroll, Esteban Ocon, Logan Sargent, and Valtteri Bottas. I think we continue with our bottom 5, and we commend a certain Logan Sargent for getting into Q2 and showing signs of improvement. I think we spoke on last episode that realistically Logan Sargent should be pushing for 13th, 14th, 15th with it throughout these next couple of races, just to build on something, a level of consistency. And I think he started that. He listened to our claims, to our hopes for him, qualifying 14th. Ethan, what did you make of Logan Sargent? I mean, the upgrades that have given Williams a Q3 for Alex Albon have propelled Logan Sargent into Q2. And hopefully he can deliver a bit more, get potentially close to Albon's level, and then Williams are well and truly cooking.
Yeah, with Logan Sargent, you don't expect him to be on Albon's level. Everybody knows how good Alex Albon is and how well he's performed in that Williams over these last year and a half. So you don't expect him to be matching Albon's level. You just want to see signs of improvement. And over these last two races, that's exactly what he's done. He just needs to put himself in the mix so that on that day where there is a crazy race and only 13 cars finish, he can maybe pick up a 10th place, maybe pick up a 9th place. So that's what you want to see. You want to see a level of consistency and starting to develop his skills now that he's been in F1 for half a year. You just want to see him show signs of improving. And, to be fair to him, he's done exactly that.
Esteban Ocon, 13th. I don't think it was the best of qualifying performances from Esteban Ocon with his teammate Pierre Gasly in Q3, having qualified 10th for the race. Do you think that this weekend in Silverstone, it was a bit of a struggle for Alpine? We know what happened to them in the race, a double DNF. But in qualifying, I just think they weren't at their consistent best. I think they struggled a little bit, and especially Ocon not being able to qualify for Q3.
Yeah, you could argue now that really Alpine have the sixth quickest car, so they're not even, if you judge it based on, the Red Bull take first and second, then the second quickest car, third and fourth, they wouldn't even be getting any points. For Esteban Ocon, it's his worst qualifying performance of the season, 13th, and it was quite unexpected to see him come out because he's been, even though the Alpine hasn't been what we say terrific, it's sort of been average. It's been a bit forgettable. Esteban Ocon has put in some good performances this season. So it was a surprise to see him out. But yeah, that Alpine looks like it's going backwards, and they're in big need of some improvements quickly.
Lance Stroll in 12th. I think we glance over that man because we don't need to talk about him. He dropped another stinker in a car that should be in Q3, and then Nico Hulkenberg in 11th. I know we're going to review our predictions next episode. I know you made a prediction about Nico Hulkenberg qualifying into Q3 once again, but him and Haas one lap pace, he just hooks it up every weekend by the looks of things. It's not like Kevin Magnussen struggling to get out of Q1. Nico Hulkenberg is always on the cusp of Q3 some way or another. Is he the new Mr. Saturday?
I think he might be, because I've got the qualifying results up for this season here. Kevin Magnussen's only made Q3 once, and that was when he qualified fourth in Miami. Nico Hulkenberg, if you take out his Baku and Monaco qualifying sessions, he's qualifying at a very, very consistent level. He's qualifying anywhere between 8th and 12th. So he's been exceptional this season. And I think a lot of people criticize Haas for bringing him in last season. And I was one of them in the sense that they went for a younger approach. And then within 2 years, they bailed on both of those young drivers, which didn't make sense. But Nico Hulkenberg is a proven driver. There's a reason why, he was driving so consistently for, the fourth or fifth quickest team for the last 10 years. And a lot of the time at Renault or Force India, and he's picked up very consistent results. He hasn't had the heights that he would have wanted in those podiums or wins. But, the fact that Nico Hulkenberg hasn't been in Formula One for the last 3 years is terrible. Because he is such a good driver, and he's showed it in his qualifying performances. We've spoken so much about how bad that Haas is, and he's not been able to fight for points. But he's dragging that team through the mud, really. And you want to talk about sort of Nick De Vries not pulling his weight. You can talk about Valtteri Bottas has had poor performances this season. I think Kevin Magnussen's in that conversation to be back.
On to Q3, and it was inevitable that Max Verstappen would come out on top, victorious in the top 10 shootout, with Lando Norris in second and Oscar Piastri in third. talking about the two McLaren boys because Max Verstappen, we've talked about him too much this season, just sticking it on pole and ending up winning the race. The two McLaren boys in P2 and P3, an exceptional performance. But I don't know whether it's down to their driving abilities because both of them are fantastic drivers. I think the upgrade package that they've got and on the two cars, it's just dragged them up past Ferrari, up past Mercedes, Aston Martin, see you later. You can wave Alonso goodbye. Exceptional performance in Silverstone. I don't think anybody expected them to be fighting for the pole position. And at one point, Lando Norris, to the roar of the British fans, he was on pole until the inevitable Max Verstappen ended up stealing that dream away from Lando.
Yeah, I did want to mention that because so obviously we were at the ground, and the roar from every single person in the circuit, apart from this one person stood in front of us in a Max Verstappen hoodie, the roar from everybody when Lando Norris put it on pole at the end of Q3 was deafening. It was unbelievable. And unfortunately, Max Verstappen had to ruin everyone's day. But, well, I think what this shows is that every single person that, watches F1 deserves to give Mika Hakkinen an apology. Because he said this a couple of months back, I think after Miami, when they were sort of 17th and 18th. He said McLaren will be the ones to challenge Red Bull this season. And tell you what, they're the closest that any other team has got to challenging Red Bull this season. So I think he deserves to have an apology from every single F1 fan who, was criticizing him and saying, if you think that, I've got some magic beans to sell you. The backlash he got after that comment, he deserves the biggest apology. But yeah, unbelievable performance from Norris and Piastri, and it shows how good a driver they are. They're at the top level, and even Piastri coming into the sport, he's been very underrated. I think he's gone under the radar of a lot of people, and he's been very close to Norris's performances.
Well, I'll apologise now. I'm sorry, Mika Hakkinen. I didn't mean to disrespect you, even though I didn't. I don't think we even mentioned it on here. But I'll apologise for every F1 fan out there regarding those comments. Leclerc, Sainz, and P4 and P5. Right. Okay. And then we'll also throw into the mix sixth and seventh for Mercedes. Both of us were standing next to each other, obviously, as we do, as we went together on the Saturday. And we saw our four titans of Leclerc, Sainz, Russell, and Hamilton collide with Ferrari, obviously coming out on top on the Saturday. And you mentioned to me, I think your words were, just wait for the race on Sunday. Just wait for the race. You may have gone 1-0 up. You may have gone 1-0 up in qualifying, but just wait for the race. But Ethan, do you think that Mercedes were unfortunate not to be higher, maybe to be ahead of the Ferraris? Because I think I even mentioned it in the back, kind of like late on in last episode, that Ferrari have got nothing to worry about with a Mercedes. But then again, they might win the race. And I think winning the race, you didn't. But I think on the Sunday, you outperformed us. But let's talk about the Saturday. What were your feelings and emotions when you saw the two Ferraris ahead of the two Mercedes?
I don't think it was the fact that Ferrari were ahead of Mercedes as much as, I got a bit of grief from you. I think it was the fact that provisionally Lewis Hamilton was on the front row and ended up qualifying seventh. That was a big one for me because Hamilton usually runs so well around Silverstone and put it on the front row, which you kind of thought could happen, and then to end up qualifying seventh was I was a little bit gutted after that. But I will just remind you of what you said after qualifying when you were saying Mercedes are washed, Forza Ferrari. And I said, wait till the race. There's no points for Saturday. So yes, you went 1-0 up at half time, but Mercedes clawed it back and won 4-1 by the end of the match.
Hey, I had you in the first half, but in the second half, Ferrari fumbled it as they usually do. Our last talking point in Q3, Alex Albon. Once again, another consistent performance, another fantastic performance qualifying into Q3, ending the session in eighth. Ethan, take it away. What did you think of his performance? It's just Alex Albon things again.
I don't think I need to say much more than that, to be honest. Yeah, it's just Alex Albon doing what he does. He's a top driver. I think you can see now that he's not in that high pressure environment of Red Bull, you can start to see just how good a driver he is that got him that Red Bull seat in the first place. And he's really dragging Williams through the mud, particularly last season with his performances. And this season, they've got a better package. I think James Vowles has come in and done a great job as team principal. But yeah, you can see that Williams is progressing, and you can't really say it's considered backmarker any longer. You know, you think about how good the car is, the performances Alex Albon is putting up, and now Logan Sargent's had an upturn in form. So you've got to say that, you know, Williams are in a good position at the minute. Whether that can be taken into some of these more traditional circuits with where a lot more downforce is required and it's a lot less power dependent, you can only wait and see. But for the time being, everything looks good for Williams and Alex Albon. A third straight Q3 appearance, you can't complain.
Onto our driver by driver kind of ratings review. Let's start off with pole man, race winner, Max Verstappen. Another fine weekend for Max Verstappen. He'd say simply lovely, but he was troubled from the start. Lando did take the lead. They were a handful of laps until Max Verstappen inevitably blasted past him. But McLaren did trouble Max Verstappen, and it could have been a shaky one. I think Max Verstappen was shaking after seeing Norris just absolutely dive past him. And it could have even been Piastri as well, if it wasn't for a little bit of a squeeze. It could have been a McLaren P1 and P2. But yeah, for me, Max Verstappen, another fine weekend apart from the start on the first few laps of a race. But I've given him a 9.5. I don't think you can give him a 10 out of 10. If he was leading from start to finish, maybe you'd give him a 10 out of 10. But it's just Max Verstappen things once again. It's a 9.5 out of 10. I don't think it was a perfect weekend. Apart from them first few laps, it's a 9.5 for me.
Yeah, I've given him a 9 out of 10. It wasn't the perfect weekend for Max Verstappen. I think he would have been in a little bit of trouble had Norris put up a bit more of a defence. He was complaining about, tyre temperatures running in the dirty air. So I think if Norris had put up a bit more of a defence, maybe kept them behind for a couple more laps, Verstappen could have been in trouble. Inevitably, he would have won the race. But put him under a bit of pressure, see how he takes it, which he hasn't had this season at all. But yeah, a very good performance from Verstappen, a dominant win, but it wasn't perfect. So I've given him a 9 out of 10.
On to Lando Norris, and only a 10 out of 10 is acceptable here. I don't think we can go for anything else. Starting P2, finishing P2, perfect weekend. I can't say anything more because I think you'll be saying the same. 10 out of 10, perfect weekend.
Yeah, exactly that. I think we've only given out now 8 10 out of 10s, and this is Lando Norris' second. Back-to-back 10 out of 10s. Yeah, you can't give him anything different. An exceptional performance, and yeah, it just proves when he's got a good car, he can, fight for podiums and fight for wins. He just needs to have that package underneath him that works, essentially. So he's very unfortunate at the start of the season. And it goes to show how bad that car was. He wasn't even getting out of Q1. And now he's fighting for podiums and fighting Max Verstappen, who's been so dominant this season. So it goes to show how good a driver Norris is, and you could say he's a future world champion material.
On to Lewis Hamilton, P3 man. I've given him a 9 out of 10, and you may criticize me for this one. But I think purely on the basis of a Saturday, you think Lewis Hamilton, Saturday at Silverstone, you think potentially top three, front row. And he didn't quite deliver that. He did make 4 positions up from the race start to finish P3, which obviously puts 2 Brits on the podium for the first time since 1999. Irvine and Coulthard on that day in Silverstone. But yeah, I've given him a 9 out of 10. I don't think it was quite vintage Silverstone Lewis Hamilton. He did very well to claw it back onto the podium, but I just think he was missing an inch to kind of battle with Lando and Verstappen.
Yeah, I had a split opinion about this because I don't think it was a 9 out of 10 performance from Hamilton. I've given him a 9 out of 10 because he still made up a podium, but I don't think it was the same 9 out of 10 performance which we gave him for Spain. It wasn't. He didn't look as comfortable as he did in Spain. I think he got quite fortunate with the safety car and timing of that, where he got a free pit stop. But then again, compared to his teammate, Russell got a lot of these fortunate safety car timers last season. So maybe this is just their luck balancing out a little bit. So, and that is really what Hamilton can credit that podium to is, he kept it out for a little bit longer, extended the stint and hoped for a safety car, and it worked out, claimed third place, and then, that podium never looked in doubt. But I think he probably would have finished around fourth or fifth without that safety car. So I've given him a 9 out of 10, but I was half debating giving him an 8 for that performance.
You know about us handing out 10 out of 10s? Oscar Piastri's got one from me.
Same.
Yeah. It was, again, the 2 McLarens. I know he dropped 1 place from the start. Okay. But qualifying P3, finishing P4, your best finish in Formula One, there's just a 10 out of 10 screaming.
Yeah, completely agree. It's his best performance in Formula One. He was unlucky not to get a podium because of the timing in the safety car. We thought that McLaren had fumbled it when they brought the cars in for hards, and they were going to end up finishing sort of 6th and 7th. But no, they held on brilliantly. Some great defensive performance from the pair of them, and they got the result they deserved. But unfortunately for Piastri, wasn't quite to be. Didn't quite get that podium. But I think it's a matter of time until he gets his first Formula One podium.
On to George Russell, qualified 6th, finished 5th. But I don't think this was the George Russell we used to seeing. I think this George Russell that we saw in Silverstone is a George Russell of kind of a bit of struggles, a bit of struggles and woes compared to his teammate. I've given him an 8 out of 10. Compared to his teammate who finished on the podium, I think Lewis kind of looked more calm and assured, whereas George was obviously scrapping with the Ferraris, and then had Sergio Perez kind of on his back as well. But yeah, I think this is not the George we're used to seeing. I think the George that we're used to seeing is the very feisty, the very punchy George Russell, and this one that we saw at Silverstone, I think, is more of a defensive George Russell that we saw. So I've given him an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, just to go back to Oscar Piastri a second, I think he's probably the best Formula One rookie since Charles Leclerc back in, what was it, 2018? I'd say. So, in the last 5 years, he's probably been the best rookie that we've seen on the grid. But yeah, for George Russell, I've given him an 8 out of 10 as well. I thought he was unlucky with the safety car timing. I think without that, he could have fought for a podium. I think he would have been on the back of Piastri like he was. So we would have had at least 4th place. So got a little bit unlucky, and there was some questionable defending from Leclerc, which we'll get on to a little bit later on. But yeah, I thought it was a decent performance, but it's he's had a tricky few races. P5 is a good result, but he needs to recapture that form which he had at the start of last season. And wow. And at the end of last season when he picked up that win.
Sergio Perez, 6 out of 10. Less needs to be said about that man. Recovered well to finish into in the top six, but starting P16 is simply not good enough, Sergio. You can't be doing this week in, week out. I know we talked about Max Verstappen storming through the field and finishing P1. Sergio Perez is trying. I think Sergio Perez is trying to do that. Just starting P16 and trying his luck. That's the first challenge. That's the question mark challenge. That's what Sergio Perez is thinking. I think he's thinking PR kind of what can get me the most views, etc. But yeah, I've given him a 6. Yeah,
Or
it's
maybe,
just
he's starting around the position, see if he can win from it. Or see if he can get a podium from there. Like you do in like the F1 game or something, just try and overtake as many cars as possible. Um, I've also given him a 6 out of 10. I will say I have boosted his rating by one, because during the driver interviews on Saturday on the main stage, he was asked what is his favourite British food was. He said a scone, and being from Cornwall myself, a scone is very important in the way it's prepared. Um, so he was asked, would you put jam or cream first on the scone? And he had the correct answer of jam first. And anybody from Devon that wants to come at me for that, feel free, because I will say that, and I will never back down on that. It is jam first. Sorry for that, but sorry for the mini rant. 6 out of 10 for Sergio, not good enough. Move on.
I was waiting for you to mention the scone debate. The scone discussion, should we say? Because you were very, very vocal on it on the Saturday. He was like, yes, he's getting an extra point because of that. So purely on the basis of the scone, he gets a 6, not a 5.
Yep, exactly that. It wasn't a good enough performance. I don't think he should get a high grade for going from 16th to 6th, in the quickest car on the grid. But he gets an extra point from me for having a correct taste in how to prepare a scone. So yeah, he gets an extra point from me.
Fernando Alonso up next, qualifying in P9, finishing in P7. I think, do we give a better rating than Perez? Yes, I think I do. I'm going to give him a 6.5 out of 10. It's not, yet again, it's not the Fernando Alonso that we're used to seeing. The man did say that he's going to finish on the podium in every other single race apart from a Spanish Grand Prix, and he's fumbled it already. Um, but I think he had a better performance than Sergio Perez, because Sergio Perez is in the quickest car. He's qualifying 16th and can only make it past Alonso by a position. So 6.5 out of 10 for me for Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, I've given him a 6, but I think I will go with you and give him a 6.5. I think he deserves a slightly higher grade than Perez. Yeah, it's I don't know whether it's that Aston Martin is sort of slowed down, being caught up by a few cars over these last couple of races, or whether it is just track dependent. But yeah, it's unfortunate for Alonso. That's what 3 out of the last 4 races he's finished off the podium. So yeah, I think it's going to be a struggle to get that first win of the season, and the first win in a decade, which he so badly wants. But yeah, it's going to be tricky. But hopefully we can see an improvement. But 6.5 from me.
On to Alexander Albon, starting P8, finishing P8. Is this another 10 out of 10 performance? Question mark. I don't think it is. I've given him a 9.5 out of 10. I think a 10 out of 10 would have seen him get past Fernando Alonso, and finish in P7, maybe even P6, because I think with the upgrades that Williams have got, I think they are capable of challenging higher up, and like we said, I don't think we can class them as backmarkers anymore. So yeah, I've given him a 9.5 out of 10.
Yeah, I've given him a 9 out of 10. Same reasoning, really. I don't think you can give him a 10 out of 10 when we have seen better performances this season from Alex Albon. A great performance, 4 valuable points. He beat both Ferraris, which I thought I just mentioned there. But yeah, it wasn't a 10 out of 10 performance, but it was a very good performance from Alex Albon. So yeah, 9 out of 10.
You mentioned them there. Let's group them together. Ninth and 10th, Leclerc and Sainz, the two Ferrari drivers. I've given them 4 out of 10. Saturday, it was good, but on the Sunday, where the points are given out was simply not good enough. Strategy kind of went hand in hand. They decided to keep Carlos Sainz out instead of pitting him. It's just Ferrari things once again. Yeah, the less I say about Ferrari strategy, the better, I think.
Yeah, I gave a 5 out of 10 each. I was slightly nicer, but yeah, again, not good enough. When you're starting fourth and fifth, you can't be finishing ninth and 10th, especially when you're Ferrari and you've got one of the quickest cars out of the grid. Yeah, it's been a difficult season for Ferrari. They're about 50 points off Mercedes now for second place. And at this rate, it looks more likely that McLaren will catch them than they'll catch Mercedes and Aston Martin. So yeah, it's I don't know what's happened with that Ferrari because they were so quick last weekend in Austria, yet so slow here. I think strategy played its part, and they were unlucky with the timing of the safety car and that the fact that they both pitted just before. But yeah, I don't know. It's a difficult one to judge, really. But yeah, I thought Sainz was very unlucky to lose 3 positions in the space of a lap because Perez forced him off the track. I will just say that, and I'm surprised Perez didn't get a penalty for that. When I think it was at the Vale chicane, I think. He's completely gone off the track. He's cut it, forced Sainz off the track. Sainz has then lost a position to Perez. He's lost a position to Albon as well. And then a couple of corners later to Leclerc, who also forced him off the track. So I don't know what's going on there at Ferrari, but Sainz is actually ahead of Leclerc in the Drivers' Championship. So I don't know why they continue to favour Leclerc instead of giving them equal treatment. So, as someone who I do like Sainz, I think I think he's a fantastic driver, and have done for a number of years. To see the way he's treated at Ferrari isn't the nicest. And he's only one of 2 drivers that's qualified in the top 10 every single race this season. The other being Fernando Alonso. So he's put in some very good performances, a very consistent level from Carlos this season. And yeah, he was unlucky to lose a number of positions in the way he did at Silverstone.
From bad performers to a good performer, Logan Sargent starting P14, finishing P11, 8 out of 10 from me. I think a very, very respectable performance from the eagle, from the American. Like that meme that with the eagle just kind of rings in my head still. It just the eagle sound just rings in my head for some reason. But I've given him an 8. You gave me a bit of a stare. Is that because you've gone higher?
I gave him a 9 out of 10 because if you think we gave Alex Albon a 9 out of 10 for finishing 8th, and Logan Sargent is a rookie. The difference in the level of the 2 drivers for Sargent to finish 11th and his teammates finish 8th, that's a pretty close gap because they're only separated by about 10 seconds on track. I know there was a safety car, which played into his hands slightly, but we gave Lewis Hamilton 9th when that also played into his hands. So yeah, I thought for Logan Sargent to be on the brink of a point within 5 seconds of a points finish, and to give his best performance in F1 to date, I thought it was worthy of a 9, personally. But we'll settle in the middle for an 8.5. which I do think is slightly harsh on Logan Sargent given his great performance.
I mean, I'm happy to settle with a 9. You've given me a good debate there, so I think a 9 will do for Logan Sargent. Valtteri Bottas, a driver who's been hit and miss. I think Silverstone kind of played into his hands a little bit. And let's remember the man started from P20, and to finish P12 is very, very good.
Did he start from the pit lane? I think he may
Did he?
have
I don't
started
think
from
he
the pit
did.
lane because he got disqualified from qualifying. He may have started from the pit lane.
It may have started. It may
He
have
might have
even
done.
started from the pit lane, but I'm pretty sure I saw an Alfa Romeo on the back row of the grid. So if it was a back row start or a pit lane start, regardless, Valtteri Bottas, a good performance to yet again be on the brink of points, and I think a point he needs. So if I've gone with Logan Sargent an 8 initially, I'm gonna drop one and give Valtteri Bottas a 7. I think it's a good performance, but from Valtteri Bottas standards, he needs a point and he needs it quickly.
Yeah, I've given Valtteri Bottas an 8 out of 10. I'm maybe making this up with saying he was starting from the pit lane. But I would have thought after being disqualified from qualifying that he would have started from the pit lane. So yeah, an 8 out of 10 when he's gone from 20th to 12th. He's made up 8 positions in the race. If he started where he qualified, in which would have been 15th, which may have even been better if he hadn't run out of fuel, then he could have been fighting for those points. So I thought it was a good performance from Bottas. You can't really complain about it too much. We've criticised quite rightfully his performances this season. However, this was the opposite. This was a good performance from Bottas on the brink of points. Not quite to be, but a solid showing from Bottas. So I'll give him an 8 out of 10. So we settled with a 7.5.
On to Nico Hulkenberg, our new Mr. Saturday. I give him I may have been a little bit harsh for giving him a 6.5 out of 10, with him obviously being on the brink of Q3. But I just think it's his Sundays that just need to improve. Yet again, obviously being qualifying P11, finishing behind Logan Sargent and Valtteri Bottas. Like I said, his Sundays just need to improve drastically. If he can keep his rate of performances from the Saturday over to the Sunday, he'll be getting 8s and 9s out of 10s from me every weekend. But yeah, his Sundays just need to improve that a little bit to get the higher ratings. So 6.5 out of 10 from me.
Yeah, I haven't been too harsh on Nico Hulkenberg because I think that car is an absolute tractor in the race, the Haas. So, think of how many positions both him and Magnussen have lost through the race compared to their qualifying position. And, that's why they're not higher in the Constructors' Championship, is because of how bad their race pace is. And you could argue their race pace is the worst on the grid. So I gave him a 7 out of 10. 13th is a respectable finish from Haas, which you've got to say is probably one of the 3 back markers at this point, along with maybe the Alfa Romeo and the Alfa Tauri. So yeah, a 7 out of 10 for me.
A 7 out of 10. Okay, we'll settle with a 7 for Nico Hulkenberg. Let's quickly glance over Lance Stroll because I don't want to talk about him too much. 5 out of 10 from me. Just average, bog standard.
Yeah, 4 out of 10 for me because he got that penalty. He crashed out Gasly, so that I've knocked a point off for that immediately. Don't know what he's doing. He's trying to dive up the inside of Vale, and there's no room there. It's Gasly's corner. There wasn't the room there to begin with, and he really should be backing out of that. And how he's only got a 5-second penalty, I'm really not sure. I think there was another couple of moves where he forced drivers off the track. And yeah, it goes to show he is not a very good wheel-to-wheel racer and cannot race without crashing someone else out. So I've given him a 4 out of 10. but we'll settle in the middle.
Zhou Guanyu next. He gets a 6 out of 10 from me. I think he started the race from 17th because of Bottas's disqualification from qualifying, making up 2 places. Yet again, I think he's shown that he's the superior Alfa Romeo this season, and I think this race kind of showed why Bottas has that touch of experience, and he was able to kind of propel himself up the order where Zhou Guanyu couldn't initially just make up as many places as his teammate. So I've settled with a 6 out of 10.
Yeah, I gave him a 5 out of 10. Thought he was quite anonymous throughout the race. He didn't really make too many moves. Made a couple of positions, but I think that was more down to cars around him not finishing. So the Alpines both started in front of him, both retired. So there's 2 positions immediately. Yeah, he had that exceptional performance in Spain, and since then he's been a little bit average, Zhou. So yeah, Bottas showed his experience in this race. For a second there, I thought you were saying that this shows why Zhou is the superior of the 2 drivers when Bottas beat him. So that's why I'm, if you saw me look a little bit confused, that's why. But yeah, 5 out of 10 for me. So yeah, not the best performance from Zhou, but in a difficult car, you can't really complain too much about that performance.
The 2 AlphaTauris are the final finishes of the race, and I've given both of them the same rating as the Ferraris. I've given them both a 4. I think that car is just very, very tricky to handle. And it just kind of showed with their kind of lack of anything throughout that race. Tsunoda couldn't make any inroads, and neither could Nick, and he had to. He paid for the lack of performances. So yeah, both of them get a 4 from me.
Yeah, I went slightly nicer. I also gave them the same as I gave the Ferraris. I gave them both a 5. So we'll set in the middle for a 4.5. I don't know what's happened to Tsunoda. He had, those first 5 races, he was exceptional. He finished 11th, 11th, 10th, 10th, 11th. And then since that Monaco problem, really, because Monaco was the next race after that, he was running in the points until he had an issue, dropped way down. And since then, he's not quite been the same. He also got that penalty in Spain, actually, as well, when he was running in the points. So maybe that's to do with it slightly. But these last 3 races in particular, he's been way off it. And then Nick de Vries he's been punished from not hitting the ground running from the get-go when Tsunoda was putting in good performances, and also a lack of pace in that AlphaTauri. So, yeah, I've given them both a 5 out of 10, but yeah, nowhere near good enough for probably the slowest car on the grid.
On to the retirees, Pierre Gasly, Kevin Magnussen, and Esteban Ocon. I've given the 2 Alpines a 4.5 out of 10. I think they're qualifying so-so. Probably better for Pierre Gasly than Esteban Ocon, but I think both of them kind of struggled throughout the weekend. And then Kevin Magnussen probably gets a 2.5, 3 out of 10 for me. He's just nowhere near his teammate. And he's showing that he's struggling a little bit throughout these last couple of races. He's showing a sign of a bit of a wobble. So yeah, a 4.5 out of 10 for the 2 Alpines, and then a 3 out of 10 for K-Mag.
Wow, that was a lot harsher than I was expecting. So I'll kick things off with Esteban Ocon. He retired on like lap 8, so I gave him middle of the road. I gave him a 5 out of 10. I don't think you can be too harsh when I think it was a hydraulics issue that caused him to retire. So I wasn't too harsh on him because he didn't have a lot of running. He didn't have the greatest qualifying. So yeah, 5 out of 10 for me. Kevin Magnussen, I'm pretty sure he was running okay until he had that engine issue after his pit stop, I believe. I think he was in a cluster of cars that were, I think, between 12th and 16th or something like that. He was in that group. I don't think he was too far behind the Ferraris in actual fact. Um, so yeah, I gave him a 6 out of 10. I was a lot kinder than you were with that one. And Pierre Gasly, I gave him a 6 out of 10. He was fighting for points until he had that unfortunate incident with Lance Stroll. But I think after the race and having a slight jab at Carlos Sainz was a little bit strange when he wasn't even the one that crashed him out. So yeah, but Gasly was fighting for the points. He qualified in 10th and then was fighting for 10th in the race. So yeah, I can't be too harsh on him. So I gave him a 6 out of 10.
And that rounds off episode 21 of On the Grid Podcast. Thank you, Ethan, for joining me once again this week. We'll be back in a week's time, reviewing our British GP predictions, looking at a bit of news in the paddock. Daniel Ricciardo exclusive. He's back. And previewing our Hungarian Grand Prix predictions, which is the penultimate race of the first half of the F1 season. Thank you for listening. Thank you for engaging with all of our content. Like I said, we'll see you next week. Goodbye.